Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of Let's Commiserate. I am your favorite host, Sam.
And I'm Dave.
You definitely are. You are so Dave.
Dave.
We're happy to be back. We know it's been a while, but the last time we were here, Skeleton Crew was still in the middle of its first
It was still a show, and people cared about it.
People did care about it. You just lost track. I was still watching it and
I put on an episode the other day just because I was like, you know what, let me watch this again. And my flatmate came in and he's like, Jude Law. I was like, yeah.
Can we just rewind back to the part where you called him a flatmate?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were living in London, darling.
It's a great. I feel like we need to use this term more often. Because roommate is just such a, I feel like he's like a brother, like a sick
mate.
Yeah. My flatmate. I don't know. I heard a British guy say it once and I was like, that's awesome. We should normalize visiting.
All them because that's what they are.
And then if you go
In
shopping
England.
for a house, you go flatting.
So are you going to go back to your flat after this?
I will. I am.
Oh dear. I say. Yeah, that just needs to stop. That just like I am not.
No, do it more. This is America. I'm gonna make it the same.
Yeah, well, Skeleton Crew, we never really. I still have my notes for the remaining episodes that we were going to podcast about, but I think life got the best of us.
It's been. I mean, I know it's only February, but it has been a year.
Well, yeah, what's new with you?
Well, so I'm engaged. Right? Oh, look at the ring. It's so beautiful.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so that was a huge turning. Yes.
I would say it's a huge turning point.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we haven't really talked about this too much on the podcast. I feel like you kind of vocalized your relationship more. But yeah, so Jesse and I, we've been dating for almost a year now, and popped the question last month, and surprise, she said yes.
It was a surprise to us all.
Yeah, I know, to Jesse. So yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah. So now it's your turn to be in all the fun stages of.
Oh, it has been. I've never been this talked out. Because everyone you haven't seen in just a couple of days are gonna be like, "Hey, what's new? How's it going? You know, or what? Do you have a date yet? Have you planned? Like, where are you going for your honeymoon?" And it's like, okay, I just need all these questions to stop because it's too much. It's too much. I'm just here to get my coffee, or I'm just here to get my lunch. Like, please don't talk to me.
Yeah. I became a big fan of like 3-word answers. Like, it's going well. We're almost done.
Yep.
And leaving it at that.
Yep. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm not burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just salty.
Shocking.
Because I do, honestly, I feel like sometimes I utilize conversations with people as an opportunity to kind of review things in my mind and be like, oh yeah, I have to send that one guy like this email or like confirm that one thing or whatever the case is. And I'm like, oh, let me just vocalize it with you. And then I talk about it. They feel, actually, usually they kind of get the glazed eyes because they don't actually care.
Right.
They're just being interested because it's the thing to do, you know?
Right.
They're like, hey, how's it going? What's new? And you're like,
this
you just kind of overdump and overshare, and you train them to stop asking silly questions.
Yes.
So really, we're training them, right? You know?
Yeah, it's a process. You had posted you guys went to the city last week.
Yeah, I actually had a training class down there. Because do you know that New York State has redone some legal stuff for their home health aides, and they've converted it into a CDPAP program, and they've not secured, they've like brought all these like side programs into one program, and now you have to get re-registered as a PCA for, it's like really complicated and all this stuff. So I did a nice little course down in New York City.
So that applies to
you down. No, this is more like home health aid and stuff. So like PCA work. And,
okay.
But, got certified for, recertified for that for New York State. So nice. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Get to help take care of my grandma.
Nice.
So that's exciting.
Grandma.
But yeah, just paperwork. It's just legal paperwork and stuff. But it was really nice while we were down in Brooklyn. I went with my brother,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Hey, we have like a drive home and stuff. Do you just want to go like hit up a brewery on the way back?"
Make the most of
I
it.
was like, "Yeah." So we went to Six Point
Mhm.
in City Point, the City Point Mall Arena down in like up in Brooklyn. Fantastic. 5 out of 5 stars. I would definitely recommend. Like go there. They have this we went to I think a Vietnamese Thai restaurant, and we got like noodles, and then they had like there are all these shops. They had taco shops and the Six Point Brewery. I definitely want to go back.
Yep.
Super clean, and their merch was on point.
Okay, well, we have to wrap up our podcast.
All right, well we gotta go.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend check out City Point in Brooklyn.
Yeah, we went. I think it was that same day or same weekend.
Wow.
Not to Brooklyn, but we went to a sushi place, and they were offering a matcha IPA.
I've seen these advertised.
Was it? You see, it just looks like a green beer. But I was. It was a
I
group
don't
of.
know if that's really appealing. You're like,
It was a group of 12 of us, and it was kind of one of those like, I'll get it if you get it. I'll get it if you get it, and
that's how all bad,
was-
like good friendships.
that's how good positive peer pressure
Yeah.
starts. But we all got it. It was actually surprisingly, literally, good. But the matcha wasn't overpowering.
Yeah.
So it was a matcha IPA. It was not overpowering. Like when I said my first,
Or was it?
it was.
Because I feel like those are very competing flavors.
It was, yeah. Neither side was overpowering. It was only like towards the end when I was taking like the final sips. Was like, okay, now I'm getting more of the matcha.
Yeah.
But
It all settles. To,
it was,
you know.
it makes for a good photo. The green.
Yeah.
It either looks matcha themed or St. Patty's Day themed, but
Or both.
or both. Matcha St. Patty's.
Matcha Saint Matcha. My favorite IPA.
Yeah. So it was. So I think we both had some good beer experiences.
Yeah, no, it's been a good week for beer. So,
Yeah.
if you're in the market for a good beer, where did you go?
This was Frightened Tuxedo.
Oh wow, okay,
Tuxedo Sushi, New York.
nice.
Mm-hmm. So
It makes sense. The matcha makes sense now. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't connect.
I
that.
said it was a sushi.
Oh, it's like yeah, I didn't think that was gonna lead in so well, but yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Anywho,
It was a good week.
we know it's been a while. We, of course, have been focused on Star Wars content, and
Because we're big Star Wars fans.
if you couldn't
be
tell.
honest.
And we had said that we would get back to reviewing some good old murder mystery movies. So here we are with
Bum, ba-da, ba, 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 da, 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 da. Ba, 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 ba. Oh wait, no, this isn't a 20th century podcast.
You're doing the opening to Star Wars.
Am I?
We're not talking about Star Wars. Sorry,
Put it in my brain. Okay, so we're doing one of the, at least in modern culture, one of the best murder mystery films. Knives Out.
Knives Out.
Yeah.
Here we are. One of the last gifts that we received before COVID-19 took the world by storm. I went to see this in theaters. And it came out in
That's a rarity anymore.
in fall of 2019. And yeah, I remember seeing previews for it and just being captivated by the aesthetic of it. That they were really appearing to lean into the classic traditional murder mystery genre with a modern twist. And went to see it in theaters, and it definitely exceeded expectations.
Which is kind of strange because at least in recent history, I feel like the classic murder mystery genre is a lost art, really.
Yes.
Because you had like a couple of good, like, and we're talking not just like action thrillers, but we're talking about like, just pure-hearted thrillers. We're talking like classic Hitchcocks,
Film noir.
those kind of dramatic storytelling. There was, a bunch back in like the 50s, 60s. Not so much in like the 90s, 2000s. Like
It died out. I like there's people had started to feel like the genre was becoming
formulaic, stale, predictable.
Which, to be fair,
Of course. You can only take so much of, the big reveal.
oh, you mean the butler did it?
The butler, yeah. Or it was the spouse.
Never saw that one coming.
Spouse.
But Ryan Anderson.
Johnson.
Sorry, Ryan. Sorry, different Ryan.
We have a friend named Ryan Anderson.
No, but it's spelled with an I. Ryan. Ryan Johnson. And we were actually watching a video interview with him a little earlier, a behind the scenes take, and his take on this was so refreshing because he's like, look, I know this is gonna be like the audience that you're targeting has more knowledge and more smarts about how a murder mystery is supposed to go than you ever will be able to obtain. I mean, think about the millions of people have seen this.
Yeah.
Potentially billions of people have seen this. And their collective innate power.
Sorry, yes.
He's like, look, I'm not going to give them the same old formulaic storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, so we're going to take this broad spectrum, like classic murder mystery, and just the way he even started it. Like, and he talked about how, like, we're going to film this in a house that looks like your average stereotypical murder mystery mansion.
Yeah, he had said, like, getting you comfortable, thinking like, okay, I know what to expect. We're just in a murder mystery and really setting the scene. But then, like, getting you comfortable and then catching you.
Welcomes you, come into my house. Here's a robe. Here's some slippers. Here's a nice warm cup of cocoa. Take a sit on the couch. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to turn your entire world upside down.
And I think this movie has so many things going for it. The casting, the cinematography, but what really sets it apart is the writing, and that was where he really
Which, have we not talked about this before? You can't just rely, and even in the interview, he talked about, like, you can't just rely on this almost like mathematical, like, this person was here, that person was there, this kind of like clockwork to tell the story.
Right.
He's like, it's a murder mystery first, but a movie second. Like, you still have to want to watch this as a film.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were talking about, like, the cinematics, the color, the shots of the acting,
the music, actually, the
everything. And we're going to go into more detail, but just from the outside, everything about this movie is 110%.
Yes. And it was interesting when he was talking about subverting audience expectations to the point where it starts with them just sitting down and naming each member of the family in their, in interrogations, I guess. Like, the sister or the daughter or something like that.
Now, it was interesting that some of the producers, they found, when they initially said, all right, we're going to make this movie and stuff, they had their producers go and find, like, this mansion in Massachusetts. And they were like, we need a house that looks like this. You walk up to it and you're like, that's a murder mystery mansion. But there were a couple of features in this house that it didn't work for the story. And it was interesting that Ryan said there were a few key aspects that they needed in order for the story to be complete.
Oh, we should give a full spoiler alert because we can't talk about this movie without talking about the spoilers.
Well, you can't. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't not. So spoiler alerts ahead. If you haven't seen the movie at this point, please, I'm begging you.
But please still listen to our podcasts. So
Pause
maybe
the
like
movie.
pause the podcast.
Pause. Go watch the movie.
And then go watch the movie. Then come back.
It's on Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, watch it now.
Yeah. But they had
and then come back and finish the podcast. Yeah. So but the library sequence was actually filmed in a secondary mansion.
They used two houses.
They used two houses and then said, hey, if we just get creative with the lighting and like the filming, we can make it look like this library is in this house. Yeah. The thing is, the second mansion that they filmed, because I mean the library is massive. It's incredible, like 2-tier. It has the like second story, kind of like I don't even know what you call it.
The
like,
upper level of the
upper level library. It's massive, but the house itself looks like a government building. Like it's this big blocky kind of gross thing.
The second house, yeah.
The second house, the first one, the big red
The ones that, I mean, there are key areas and most of the...
is just beautiful, but it's not big enough to house this kind of gorgeous library.
And I do like how in the movie they even play it up. One of the detectives on the case with Benoit Blanc, he even says, I mean, the guy practically lives in a clue board. And I just love that. Like the self-awareness that the movie has going into it. And so, yeah, going into it, we focus on Harlan, the victim, and his caregiver, our primary antagonist slash protagonist. How would you define it?
She starts as an antagonist, and that's what I love about the way Ryan Johnson develops this movie. This movie is 2 or 3 different stories, not devolved, like combined into one.
Yeah.
There's what the plot, and they're not just plot shifts; they're entire paradigm shifts, where who you think is the
Paradigm, good word.
good has that been the good word of the episode before? I feel like we've done that one.
No, I don't know.
Okay, paradigm. Look up the definition. This is a thing. We still haven't done the
Always me that look Asian dong.
dong.
Para.
The good word of the episode is
Okay. Paradigm, a typical example or pattern of something. A model. Also, I could be like a super paradigm, is what you're saying.
yeah. So when you're changing your like a paradigm shift is like the entire thought pattern has now shifted to a different, like an alternate reality. So in this classic storytelling, in the beginning of the movie, what's her name?
Marta.
Marta is the antagonist.
Yeah.
But then by the second half, she fully becomes the protagonist. She goes from being the victim to from the bad guy into the good guy, the one you want to see get. And this again, Ryan Johnson did an amazing job because, again, big spoilers. She's just a side character up until about the middle of the way, part way through the second act. And then she becomes the main character. She goes from just a side character to the main character, the one that you want to get away. It becomes almost like a crime, like a bank heist. Like you want the bad guy to get away with it, but you know in the back of your head that the inspector, the in this case Daniel Craig, has to catch the bad guy. The good guy has to catch the bad guy. So your stereotypical good person, good hero, has now become the bad guy, but you want them to get away with it. So even inside, like you're conflicted about who's gonna win. Yeah. So you have this entire like good and evil going on inside. It's the emotional turmoil that this film like just reaches in and tears out of you is fantastic.
And that is part of the genius of the writing, I will say. And Ryan Johnson in the documentary, he talks about that. He's like, we want you to feel like you found out who the killer is very early on in the movie, but we wanted her to become the first killer that you are kind of rooting for. Because, truth be told, apart from Benoit Blanc himself, Daniel Craig, Marta, played by Ana de Armas, is the only really likable character in the entire movie. She is so likable. That is, like, she plays her perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
She's well written. Because it's revealed fairly early on after they interview most of the family, and then they flash back to everything told from Marta's perspective. You realize it was an accident, or you're like, it wasn't
intentional.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. And so I remember seeing this for the first time, and that was revealed so early on that I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, oh, so it's not really like, again, it's not your tradition.
It's almost like you're let down. You're like, wait a second.
So I'm like, okay, so the mystery's been spoiled
I thought this
for me.
movie was supposed to be a lot longer than it is.
Yeah, and so you're like, the mystery's been spoiled for me early on, like before the first act is even done. And so you're sitting through this, and then you're happy to say, oh, wait, I was wrong.
That's frankly what I love about like classic Hitchcock films is where you are following the thriller aspect is not knowing the inspector and seeing them, the detective, and helping them find the clues. The thrill is seeing them be one step or two steps ahead of the detective.
Yeah.
And that constant kind of cat and mouse game. You're not just watching the mouse, you're not watching the cat. You're watching both, and it leads you to this fantastic tension between both parts.
Yeah. And Ryan,
You want Marta to get away with it.
yeah, and Ryan Johnson, he even said he didn't want to write a detective that was I forget how he worded it exactly, but he didn't want to write a detective that was all powerful or all knowing, because we've seen that before. We've seen, like, Hercule Poirot, who knows every single thing before the crime is even a quarter of the way through being solved.
I deduce that you didn't deduce. No, that is a plot device. That is a plot device.
And so you get to see these moments where Benoit Blanc, the detective,
I love those. Those are the best.
kind of dumb, or he's oblivious, or he's like listening to music.
Well, where he looks at the camera and he's like, I don't know. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes, that would be me. If I was a detective, I would be looking at this and be like, all right, guys, I got dice.
But then he wins you over at the end when he solves the whole thing. You're like, oh, he was catching on the whole time. But I did enjoy that he wasn't, all knowing or omniscient as most.
Yeah. So it would be very hard to kind of go through this movie chronologically. Because so much of it cuts back and forth and is told from alternate perspectives and then retold from different perspectives. So at the end of the day, Harlan is a
we haven't really talked.
We haven't even talked about the actual story. So Harlan is like a famous murder mystery writer, kind of like a who's the one guy that does he did The Mist and the
Stephen King.
Stephen King. He's kind of like a Stephen King kind of character,
right?
But he's this old eccentric man that lives in this murder mystery mansion, and his surroundings, the house, is basically like a museum of his books.
Yeah,
in a way, it's got all this fanciful artwork and weird statues and knives everywhere. Just kind of
it's very theatrical. It's
very dramatic.
Yeah, and so it's all revolved around his murder. And you've got the family gathered for his funeral, and
I like how they made all his family characters, not that it's all right, this is Colonel Mustard and this is Mr. Green,
Scarlet.
Miss Scarlet, and all these kind of standard, you can tell they're individuals but they have their kind of distinct personalities.
Correct.
You have the eccentric hippie aunt who hasn't lives
it's not a blood relative Thromby, but
married in, husband died, her daughter's in college for some degree, developing art.
The movie basically starts by telling you that all of these people had a motive. The eldest daughter feeling like she deserved rights to the publishing company, as did his son. The eldest daughter's husband is having an affair, and Harlan found out about it. The daughter-in-law was embezzling money from him. So everybody's got a motive.
But it is fantastic to watch, I think in the first 20 or 30 minutes of the show, watching Daniel Craig kind of interview each family member, and each family member tells the story from their perspective. And I do enjoy when a show, they take the time to kind of film some of the scenes from their perspective.
Yes.
It seems it's just kind of a cop out when you're like, oh, what did you see? Oh, I went here. Did you though? Yeah, no, I went here and I saw this and stuff. Yeah. Compared to when you have the flash scenes and you it shows them walking in or from their perspective.
Yeah. And they do a good job. There is always kind of a catalyst event in these kind of stories. In this case, it happened to be they were all gathered together for his birthday party. So it was showing everybody's playing out of events from their perspective. And so, they did that very well. It's not until much later that we hear from his caretaker's perspective, Marta, who, as it turns out,
so you have all of the clues. The story kind of gives you all of the characters, all of the pieces. It shows how Harlan has basically cut off his entire family.
Yes.
He's like, look, you're a no good, selfish guy. I'm just going to cut you out of the family. You have been swindling money from my family. I'm going to cut you out of the house. You I trust you to do your own thing, so I'm gonna like cut you out of my like. He's just literally cutting ties to everyone in the family, so everyone has a motive. So now it's kind of left up to you as a viewer, like, all right, I have all of these pieces.
Who is it?
I have no clue where to start with this. And that's when we get Marta's perspective.
Correct.
Which is the truth.
Yes. And we're going to just kind of breeze through it because there's a lot to cover. She gave him the wrong medication. She gave him, I forget the original medication she was supposed to give him, but she ended up giving him morphine instead. Yep. And you can see the panic in her eyes as it's playing out. It's a very well done scene. It connects the dots of what the other family members saw and heard. And so now it becomes more so about her trying to evade this. And there is, a beautiful little plot device of, no, I can't lie. If I even think about lying, I throw up.
That's a fantastic. Like,
just pay attention to that because it does come back later. It's going to happen again.
Literally.
And
you're
going
to see that food again.
But
it's really well done. Like, it's not an overused
right
plot device.
There's a lot of devices here that come into play later, such as, theater knives, like fake knives, the vomiting plot device, the blood stain on the shoes
that don't.
Yeah. So
hidden passage.
The clues do matter. Doors. Oh yeah, the hidden doors, which was the only set that I believe was constructed.
Looking at, like, seeing what time it is when somebody comes, when somebody goes, where the cameras are at.
Yeah. So
who's talking to who says what,
So you get the sit-down interviews with most members of the family. You don't get a sit-down interview with Ransom, Harlan's grandson, who we learn was present at his birthday party but stormed out after a confrontation with Harlan, the family patriarch.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so Ransom is just like, hate it. Who names their kid Ransom, by the way?
That's a terrible name.
Like, oh, he's beautiful, isn't he? We shall call him Ransom.
I feel like you're begging for somebody to kidnap him.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
We want a ransom. For what? For Ransom.
But his name is Ransom.
But you already have Ransom. No, we want a ransom. Well, you have a ransom.
You have a ransom, so give him back.
I
we can't return the ransom.
I demand a ransom for ransom. This is a literary impossibility.
It's what do they call that? What is that called? A paradox.
A paradox.
It's a paradox.
The ransom paradox.
Yeah, the ransom
paradox. We've discovered.
That's the real name of this movie. But
can we name the episode that? The ransom paradox.
Yeah. So after hearing everybody's stories, eventually they all gather for the will reading, the reading of Harlan's will, which if you do your research, will readings are not really a thing that happens nowadays.
But
it's more.
Look at the guy's house.
Yes.
Look at the guy's house. You don't think he's going to have a will?
Oh, yeah. And the attorney reading his will is played by none other than Frank Oz. Yeah.
What?
Yoda reads his will.
Wow.
Yes,
what a
that
plot
was.
twist.
I remember when
fantastic.
it first came out, I was like, Frank Oz is in this movie.
That's incredible.
Okay. Which, the Rian Johnson Star Wars connection, you got that.
Oh.
If that's how he ended up being in this movie.
Yeah.
So they read his will and reveal that Harlan has left literally everything to Marta, his caretaker. And for her, it's mind-blowing because she thinks that she killed him.
Yeah.
Too.
Big plot twist.
And this is such a well-done scene because this is where, up till this point, the different members of the family have approached her at different times saying like, oh, I'm on your side. I like you. I wanted you at the funeral, but I was outvoted. Many different members of the family.
Obviously just being...
saving face almost. Yeah. And then their true colors show when it's revealed that he left everything to her. They all just go ballistic and turn on her. It's so well done. And
it's no, I mean it's so dramatic, and I mean, it just tugs at your heartstrings because these people are just vile on the inside, but they're trying to be nice and stuff. And then when their true colors show, like, exactly what's going to happen next, but it's still, I mean, it's traumatizing.
And you think, oh, well, maybe there's a chance for them. But then when they start pressuring her, like, oh, you should transfer the inheritance to us.
Yeah, you're family. You're a family to us. We're a family. You need to be nice to us.
I do want to give a shout out to Ricky Lindholm. She plays Donna Thrombey, Walt's wife. I do know she has an entire plot line herself that was put to the cutting room floor.
Oh, really?
She has a motive for killing Harlan himself. Benoit Blanc, I think, pays a visit to her in these deleted scenes. But then it was cut, so she's kind of relegated to being a side character here. I forget what the exact story was, but it is funny how you see like the main characters and then the side characters in this movie.
Yeah, it becomes kind of, well, I mean, and even just like watching the interview with Ryan about how he goes through the writing process of like starting big, going small, like not even knowing who does what and stuff. Like it actually kind of brought me back to when we write our murder mysteries. Like
Right.
you kind of have these main characters and these side characters, and you may not know who the main characters are, but you definitely know who the side characters are. And they can kind of get relegated pretty quickly,
They do.
you know.
But you gotta have those. You gotta have your side.
Gotta fill out the field,
Yeah.
you know.
So the entire inheritance is willed to Marta, and even just like the small details of the family is crowding in on her, and then the cameras switch to being in a fixed position to then being handheld, and like kind of like creating the chaos of the moment. So then Ransom shows up and he says, "Hey, come with me. I'll get you away from the chaos." And they do such a good job of, they show just a couple of tidbits of what happened the night of Harlan's birthday from his perspective. So you think, oh, okay, so everything he did has been accounted for. And he says, all right, I'll help you. I'm on your side. And things just kind of take off from there. Chris Evans in his white cable knit sweater,
The fisherman sweater.
But also one of the best moments is he's like, all right, I want you to tell me the truth. And I remember that you throw up when you think of lying. And I just had you eat a bunch of chili. I was like, oh,
That's
Captain America.
what I love about this movie is they hint at the fact that Harlan is mad smart.
Mm-hmm.
They hint at that Marta is mad smart because Marta is the only one that has ever been able to beat him at not backgammon,
Chess.
at
What is it?
I can't think of the
I'm gonna find it.
not Chinese checkers.
Chinese checkers.
At the game,
Is it backgammon? It might be, but it's not.
backgammon. It's the one with the little tiles.
It's okay.
But then they also highlight, I forget where I think they bring it out multiple times, that Ransom was the only one to ever beat Harlan at this game. So you kind of indirectly, like if you're smart enough to pick up on the pieces, of course it makes sense. But it really comes down to a game between Ransom and Marta.
Correct.
Because they're the only two people that could have beat Harlan at this game.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a game of like who's smart.
Cat and mouse almost, but like
Because Ransom, and after the point where Marta tells him the truth, he has all the cards in his possession to play. Marta still trusts him. She still thinks that he's on her side. Where at the end of the movie, where you start seeing like all the things Ransom has done in the background, kind of not leading the way, but paving the way to set Marta up to take the fall.
Yep.
And the fact that she still beats him,
mm-hmm.
like that, again, the tension.
It's very well done. And I think that's what Rian Johnson was talking about when he was trying to kind of plant a Hitchcock movie within a murder mystery movie.
Succeeding.
Yeah, it really comes down to, they gather the family back together, and Benoit Blanc, he has solved it. He, because Fran, the nanny of the house, unfortunately becomes relegated to a plot device. She has discovered the truth, and she had arranged to meet up with Ransom to discuss terms, for lack of a better term. And they make such good use of just the little details here. Because one thing they say very early on, they say, the other detectives are greeting Ransom. They say, Hugh Thromby. He says, no, only the help calls me Hugh. Marta is tricked into meeting up with Fran, and Fran has been poisoned somehow. And Marta thinks Fran is telling her.
So Ransom kills her with the same morphine.
That's what it was, yes.
Yeah. So
And,
to try to pin the blame on her.
Yep. And Fran supposedly is telling Marta, you did this. But the brilliant twist at the end is
She
she
didn't
was
say,
actually saying,
"You did this." She
was
said,
saying, Hugh
did this.
I remember being in theaters and shouting an audible, "Oh!" Like,
Because that's fantastic. That is
brilliant.
Let's go back to that is really good script writing.
yeah.
That is fundamentally what makes this movie a success.
Yeah. And so all of those teeny little details that you don't think will come into play very much do come. There are very few like red herrings in this movie, which is hard to
well, and I think it's impressive to say because typically we think of a red herring as being a completely off-centered side story, like a misdirection. But this entire movie is completely centrally like it's the whole story is the main plot.
Yep.
But the plot twists are just so sharp and so jagged that you are just thrown for such a loop. It takes you a good period of time to kind of recover from them.
And that's what makes it good for a rewatch.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them are.
No, I've seen this movie 2 or 3 times, and every time it's still like, oh my, how did I miss
You pick up on other things.
I never noticed that, or wow, that's new.
And even those things like the "I vomit when I lie" come into play because Marta, when they think they've pinned the whole thing on ransom, he's like, "No, you have no proof." She gets a call that Fran has died. Or no, Fran is still alive in the hospital. She says Fran's alive. And then Chris Evans, Ransom, he says, "Yeah, I killed Fran, but what are you going to do about it?" And she throws up. And even the other detective, who is kind of playing the role of the audience, he's like, "That means she's lying." It's so well done. She pukes right.
Which is, we were talking about this at work today, that a good story doesn't need narration.
Correct.
And good storytelling simply doesn't require narration. You don't need somebody saying, this is what this means, and then this person says this, and then that person goes there. No, you can visually just pick up, if you do it right, cinematically, or just through the characters, the narration. You don't need to have these artfully contrived methods at kind of not playing, but like giving it to your audience. It's not like you're going to give the answer to the audience on a silver platter. You are going to lead them to the right conclusion.
Yes.
And that is dignifying your audience at its finest.
Yeah, you're not insulting their intelligence.
You're smart. Here are the pieces. I'm not going to tell you what they are. And then when the audience goes, "Oh, I get it now," and you're like, "Yep." That's
don't insult the intelligence of your audience. And
which is I feel like that's a lost art.
oh yeah,
It really
you're right.
is.
Yeah, I think a lot of movies or shows these days, they want to go for like the gotcha moments, but this movie definitely pays respect to the audience. And so it all culminates in, what is Marta going to do now? She's received the inheritance. And I do, before I go on that, when Ransom says, I was gonna let you take our home, our ancestral home. Benoit Blanc goes, Harlan purchased this house in the 80s.
It's just like the last straw in Hamlet's back, because you're like, this family is such a, and the thing, not even like you do like Harlan. Like Harlan is just kind of a good old boy, family guy. But obviously a terrible father. His family is horrible.
Yeah. So it all comes down to, what is Marta going to do now that she definitely has secured the inheritance? Is she going to help the family? Is she going to keep it for herself? They again circle back to one tiny detail from the beginning of the film, where Marta is drinking out of a coffee mug that says, "My house, my rules," something like that. And so she comes out to the balcony when Ransom is being arrested. The whole family turns and looks at her, kind of in an unspoken way, saying, well, what are you going to do? And she just takes a sip out of her mug that says, "My house, my rules." So brilliant.
Way to close.
So brilliant.
And what I love about this movie is that they tell you the story, the ending at the beginning.
Right.
Like throughout the entire movie, Ryan does such a good job at hinting and telling you the plot. Like, and that was one of the big things. I remember watching an interview where he was just like, "Oh yeah, we tell you who did it within the first 10 minutes of the movie." You know, it's the one part with the grandma where Marge's come on, I'm back in, and you're like, oh,
It all comes into play.
crazy old lady. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And then at the end of the movie, you have LeBlanc being like, I think you know everything, and you're just being quiet.
Yeah.
You know,
Say, we'll just sit here till you feel like talking. Yeah.
and of course, she is a crazy old lady, but
I do love how Ransom also is like, I can't stand your stupid Southern drawl.
It is-
Because Danielle Craig putting on just a horrible Southern accent.
it's pretty rough.
But again, the film is so self-aware that they,
But
acknowledge it.
dude,
But,
okay, just top props to all the acting in this was solid. Daniel Craig did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I can't think of any.
Juana de Armas plays Martha. Jamie Lee Curtis.
They do great.
Yeah, the acting is great. The casting was perfect. If I had one complaint about the movie,
Oh no.
I know.
Oh no.
The fact that when we meet the family initially,
It's too perfect. This movie is too perfect.
Right, yeah.
Okay. No other movie can measure it up. You have ruined my expectations as a film going experience, Ryan Johnson. Okay. I hate you.
when we meet the family initially, and we're doing our sit down interrogations with them, and we're even we've got their names as on screen text. We don't get an interview with Ransom, and Ransom is the whole time you think, okay, so he's definitely got something to do with this. It turns out he's got everything to do with this. The fact that I kind of wish that he had been lumped in a little bit with the rest of the family a little more, because it drew too much attention to him.
Agreed.
To the point where it kind of makes the rest of the family members feel like kind of a waste. Like they were just there to fill space.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil anything for Glass Onion, but the same thing kind of happens in Glass Onion. So you kind of wish that in that sense, not so much attention had been directed to the actual perpetrator. I've said my piece.
And that's a fair. If there was going to be any criticism of this film, I think that would be it. Because everything else about this film is pretty bulletproof.
Everything else kind of makes up for it, but
The cinematography, the music, the acting.
the score is so
Oh, yeah, let's take a
It's
second
like-
on that.
it feels like you've heard it before, but you haven't heard it before. Like just the violin string quartet. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Like how does it feel so classic, but so new? Great. And it turns out the composer is Ryan Johnson's cousin.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right, nepotism or just he is talented.
He's like, I know a guy.
He does.
So my final summation would be Ryan Johnson. You can't direct a Star Wars film, but by golly, you can direct a murder mystery.
I mean, I'm not gonna agree. I can't agree with that.
So you think he can direct a Star Wars film?
No, I don't think. I think his hands were tied. I think Disney put him in handcuffs. I think he could have, if he had full creative him.
Okay,
No, if
what?
you
This I a whole other episode.
you gave Ryan Johnson and
Yeah, you don't even. No, you have no case. You have no.
Holy Filoni. If you put him and Holy Filoni, you give them just a big budget. Who is the big guy that directed?
I think we
the
better.
one?
This could be a whole other episode, so I think we should just end it here.
I think he could do okay.
I think we should just end it here. And
All right. Well, on that note, thank you for tuning in.
go check one Knives Out.
If again, go watch Knives Out. Even if you've seen it before, go for a rewatch. It's that good.
And check out our new murder mystery, Secrets in the Ski Lodge. Available on Etsy. Takes place in the 90s.
This one's a little purpose at their home.
Perfinder, an ugly sweater party. And do it before winter's.
If you have an ugly sweater, or even if you just have a regular sweater,
Or go to your local Goodwill and buy an ugly sweater and throw a party.
this one's a good one.
Yeah. And we'll see you the next time on Let's Commiserate.